I had warned, I think on Wednesday, that we would possibly be dipping into some controversy, and I wish I had not said possibly because we will be, because we're talking to the lovely, lovely people at Anomalous Games today. We'll get to that in a second, but some controversial things may come up, and I think that should be fine. I don't think anyone's going to get butthurt over it, but I guess sort of just a general warning to anybody who's checking out. So let's get to introductions. It's going to be brief, obviously, because we only have two other people with me. The reason Buck is here today is not only because he's a kind person, but he's going to be reading the text that Anomalous will be sending, because Anomalous, if I don't think I'm out of place saying that Anomalous is a bit concerned about identity and people out there who might want to take advantage of that. So Buck was kind enough to join us to sort of be the interpreter. And so we'll be doing that in a second. We'll see how that goes. Oh, okay. And by Anomalous, I mean Aaron. I didn't wait. What happened?
I was reading. I was doing my job.
Oh, okay. You're doing your job. Okay, I will stop that then. So now we go to Aaron. I love the logo, by the way. That's very cool. I like the font. I'm a font fan. Thank you for joining us, Aaron. Who are you, as much as you can tell us? And I don't have a question yet, so I will leave that to the end, I guess.
Hi, I'm Aaron, founder of Anomalous Games and project lead for Project SOCJUS.
And is that the correct pronunciation? Is it SOCJUS, or is it SOCJUS, or SOCJUS? I want to make sure we have this right here.
The correct pronunciation is SOCJUS is fine. Though I've had a couple of people pronounce it as sock juice. Not really got a preference either way.
Okay, fair enough. Wow, that means that I've been mispronouncing it every single fucking
time.
Well,
let me say it. The sock juice is fine. It's not necessarily a correct pronunciation, but
okay. Sock juice. I really like that. I don't know why. I think because I had assumed that it was soch based on the words. So Aaron, I guess we could just start with the very basics. What I'd like to know first is how you guys decided to get together as a team and also not take outside contributions. So start with whichever one you feel is easier to answer and say whatever you like in terms of length.
The way the team came together was pretty serendipitous. It just happened on its own. I put the project out there, and a couple people approached us out of interest.
Excellent. That's very interesting. So the second part, I think, would actually be a bit easier, or maybe not to answer. But why do you guys not want to bother with Kickstarter? Why do you own, or any outside contribution? Why are you able to just do it on your own in your spare time? The project, that is.
Aaron says, as far as I'm aware, everybody on the team has a separate day job and contributes to the project on their spare time. As for why we decided not to take donations, that was something decided before the current team was put together.
Oh, interesting. I just assumed that the team was sort of always together, although I don't know why I would assume that. But we won't address that point for the moment. In as much as you can over text, could you please give us just the rough pitch of what the game is? You know, what it's about, all that, like what you would say in a PR press release.
Okay, brief as I can get it. Project SOCJUS, gameplay-wise, it's a hybrid action platformer, brawler, and Metroidvania story and setting-wise. It's a parody of 1984, but with SOCJUS instead of ingsoc.
What exactly is SOCJUS? What is it short for? What does the whole thing mean? Just whatever you would like to say.
SOCJUS is just short for social justice. Basically, it's a totalitarian regime that seeks to impose their vision of equality on society, just like the fictional organization known as ingsoc in 1984.
So in the game, that's what it is. I'm curious as to your definition of social justice in the real world, because obviously that is a concept that does exist that, you know, people have been talking about the last few years. So
this one is pretty complex. There's a lot of different definitions out there. I think the easiest way to define it is as entitled children whining about first world problems. That's probably an oversimplification of things, but I'm probably taking too long to type all this out anyway.
That's okay.
The first example that comes to mind is Trigglypuff. A grown woman throwing a temper tantrum, complete with arm flailing and unintelligible wailing. Bingo wings, Buck Bowen adds. Just because somebody on stage is saying things that she doesn't agree with. That's not the only example, of course, but to me, it's social justice in microcosm. Social justice is like something straight out of 1984. Everything they do is about control, whether it's depriving those they disagree with of the right to free speech, or censoring books and games and films. And again, this goes back to the entitlement issue. They think that they're entitled to a so-called safe space, free of things, peoples, and ideas that they consider distasteful or unpleasant. There's also a lot of focus on equity, that is equality of outcome, rather than equality of opportunity. And that's something I would like to discuss in the game, amongst other things. There's a reason this game is set in a futuristic sci-fi dystopia instead of, say, a medieval fantasy world.
Although that would be awesome.
Sci-fi is all about speculative fiction. Sci-fi is meant to ask, what if? Here we ask, what if the world was ruled by social justice? The irony is, that question has already been answered. We know what a social justice dystopia looks like because we're living in one.
Okay, well that's an excellent answer, and yeah, I understand what you're talking about, and that makes sense. And I mean, I don't know that I 100% agree that it's the age we live in. I think it is a danger. I think it is a propensity, definitely, but without any actual government power. Well, you know what? In Canada, this actually may be a bit more true, because I know that the whole thing with Jordan Peterson is going on, where he is refusing to use people's preferred pronouns if those preferred pronouns are, Z and Gier and all that stuff. So I guess it's debatable. But anyway, you've said more things, so I will be quiet. Go ahead, Buck.
This is Aaron here. It's interesting that you mentioned Jordan Peterson just now, because that's actually part of what I wanted to talk about.
Oh, sure. Well, okay, so for people who don't know, although I imagine anyone who listens to this or watches will absolutely know, very briefly, so Jordan Peterson, I'm going to get some of the stuff wrong, but just for sake of brevity, a professor in Canada, I think like Toronto, I don't know, and I think it all started where, like, in a class, he said he or she to a student when they felt that they were not a he. They felt that they were the opposite of what he was referring them to. And then he got a letter from the administration basically saying, you have to refer to people with their proper pronouns, their preferred pronouns. And further onto that, not just he if it's she or she if it's he, but these new ones like Z spelled Xe or Ze or Zir, Xir, that sort of stuff. And he said, no, I'm not going to do that. So if he continues to refuse and this law passes, he can be essentially held in contempt, where he will not necessarily go to jail, but he may be required to pay a fee. And then he said several times publicly he will not pay the fee. And so at that point, he probably would be jailed. So essentially, the way he's described it is that if he continues to choose not to use these made-up pronouns, he will effectively be arrested for it.
And so, I think a lot of the little things, or that appear little, right, with like the social justice movement, that people just go, it's just kids being kids. Where you have Jordan Peterson going over here going, no, dude, like, it's these little things that add up, that build incrementally into this, right? You start chipping away a little bit at these freedoms. Like, no, you
right.
have to say this, you can't say that. And it's like, maybe that's right. Maybe we'll just permit this one thing, and it becomes an oily decline.
Oh, I agree with you, and I agree with that. I think my thing. I mean, I don't mean to diminish it in an absolute term. I don't think this will ever fully happen in America because, one, I think people cherish freedom of speech in America almost as much as guns. And so I think there would eventually be enough pushback in America that, and I think it's going on as we speak. Well,
so Aaron says, incoming, this one will be shorter, I think. You mentioned earlier that the world we're in right now has a propensity towards social justice, and that these things are not necessarily written into law yet. But that's the thing. It's not
Oh,
just a tendency. It's actually a reality. Jordan Peterson is the most prominent case right now, but there are a couple of others that I can think of off the top of my head.
okay, fair enough. I mean, I stand to be corrected on that.
I assume there's more coming.
Yeah, I assume so as well.
By the way, quick note,
Hmm.
one of the biggest takeaways I got from Jordan B. Peterson's talks and stuff was, and I never thought about this, but I think it was him who said he said that when a minority rules a majority, it's called aristocracy or tyranny, one of those two.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, yeah, certainly.
That's not to say that the minority shouldn't have an opinion, but it's like
Yeah.
you want us to conform to 3% or 0.3 or whatever. All right, continuing with Aaron's. Jordan Peterson is the most prominent case right now, but there are a couple of others that I can think of off the top of my head. If I'm not mistaken, the state of New York has a law which requires landlords to use a tenant's preferred pronouns.
Oh, okay.
That is, you're legally required to do so, or you'll face fines and I assume imprisonment, just like Joseph Peterson. On top of that, there are also cases like the UVA rape case. Is that the Rolling Stone one? I can't quite remember. And the Mattress Girl case, where in both of these cases, the jury panels decided to ignore the principle of guilty until proven innocent and opt for a listen and believe approach instead, ignoring any hard evidence, no pun intended, or lack thereof, that ran contrary to their narrative. There's also the case of Gregory Allan Elliott, whose name was dragged through the mud and had to fight in court for 3 years for the high crime of disagreeing with a group of feminists.
Oh, I know what you're talking about there. Yeah, yeah.
So while I agree that we're not quite there yet, we are certainly looking at the first stage of a budding dystopia.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm perhaps not making myself clear enough. I am not terrified of this turning in because I feel I have enough faith in some semblance of checks and balances, at least in the States. I remain somewhat faithful that not only the legal checks and balances, but the cultural checks and balances will hold sway, although I understand that the cultural checks and balances are more liberal in their application, and I don't mean that as a pun. While we finish this particular part up, I would actually love to pivot over to the game itself, because I think we've talked about the stuff behind the game. So Aaron, I would love to know whatever you'd like to tell us in any size of a text dump about the decisions you guys are making about the art style. I believe that I read on your site that the Vivian James character is public domain, so you can use that, and cool, that's awesome. I like that design.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Vivian's design as well.
I don't remember who did that. I'm gonna have to look that up, because when I first saw it, I honestly thought it was like a real cartoon character that was in a real show or something, and then someone was like, "Oh no, it's Vivian James." I was like, "What the fuck is that?" And they're like, like video games, Vivian James. I was like, "Oh, right." But what I'm talking about is specifically, the visual design of the backgrounds of the characters, because here's some ass kissing coming for you. When I saw the trailer and it said it was pre-alpha footage, I was expecting line drawings, like the kind of shit that I do. But I was really impressed. It looked really good. And I thought, well, shit, if this is pre-alpha, I wonder what the full game is going to look like. So I know this is a very jumbled mess of a question, but just anything that you would like to share in terms of how you guys decided on the art style, and just whatever you want to say about that, because I liked it. So I'm sure that'll take a few minutes.
All right, here's Aaron speaking now.
Mm-hmm.
Quick note regarding the design process. I've actually been working together with our in-house artist, known as @broadcast_tower on Twitter, to develop the style. Regarding the design process, what I do is send him reference images with descriptions of what I want, and the rest is up to him. What I really wanted was for the social justice warriors to have a unique visual design language. They're cultists, so they should look the part. The classic cultist look is based on the KKK with their iconic robes and pointy hoods,
Oh,
but I
okay.
felt like that was a bit boring, a bit
All right.
outdated. The current design for the betas, the low-level social justice warrior grunts seen in the trailer, is inspired by the cultists in Metal Slug 5, who also wear red hoods and masks. In fact, they were included in the very first set of reference materials I sent out to our artists.
Oh, okay, great. I'm going to share the page on my side so as to give the visual people a little bit of a reference. And then we'll go ahead and start wrapping up. But yeah. There we have Vivian James. Oh yeah, here we go with the Vivian James art style. I'm skimming down to get to. Oh yeah, here's her animation of attacking, which I was like, oh god, please, I give me that sword. It looks awesome. Let me make sure I can see this on the Hangout.
I'm gonna read.
It's right. It's right there.
Aaron
go
wrote
ahead.
some more stuff.
Okay.
The Social Justice Warriors theme colors are red, white, and black, predominantly red and white. The limited colors are meant to represent their narrowness of vision. Contrast this with the protagonists, who are all dressed very colorfully. Later in the game, you'll see the SJW theme colors appearing much more prominently in the backgrounds, almost engulfing the screen, like a sort of descent into madness. As for the protagonists, most of them were designed by other people to be more specific, long before the project began. In this case, I left the designs entirely up to our artists. We've updated those a couple of times as the project has evolved. You might have noticed that the two types of SJW cultists in the trailer are wearing full face helmets and masks.
Mm-hmm.
The mask is an important part of their outfit. It's not just a mask, but an AR, augmented reality, visor, designed to show them a distorted reality in which everything is problematic. Although I suppose
sorry. Go ahead.
Although I suppose alternate reality might be more appropriate in this case. Although I suppose alternate reality might be more appropriate in this case. Strictly speaking, it functions as an ideological lens. The world they see is not the world as it is. Regarding ideological lenses, the term lens is used because an ideological lens is analogous to an actual lens. If you look at the world through colored lenses, they filter out colors that do not match the tint of their lens. If one were to remain wearing the lens after it has served its purpose, then one is receiving a distorted view of the world.
Yeah, I like the term distorted. I think that makes a lot of sense because, well, I mean, I think we've kind of covered this, but I think people grow expectations that they then tend to believe can be applied, even if it's not really practical. So yeah. All right, guys. So I apologize, but I really have to start moving towards to ending this. So so Buck, if you want to sign us off with anything at all, why don't you just go ahead and do that?
Yeah, cool. Just want to say again, thanks to both of you for the opportunity and for the practice. And I don't know if I should read what Aaron's writing. I think that was to me, actually. Sure, go ahead. Okay. Aaron says he appreciates me reading. And I got a great voice. Thanks, buddy. And yeah, so let's just sign off with your future is full of your present actions. So wherever you want to be tomorrow, do today.